Welcome to the newest episode of the European Republic, the Euro-Federalist podcast. And today I have a guest from a movement that is very close to my heart because I also co-founded it, Astra Europa. And I'm very happy to welcome today our operations and finance lead, Pietro. Welcome, Pietro.
Hi, Nikodem. Welcome.
Great having you. Let's get into it. What's the story of Pietro? How did you come to become active for Europe, join Astra? What's your background lore?
I think as many people in our movement grew up in Europe, obviously, but in a lot of different places in Europe. I traveled a lot as a kid. I lived in 3 countries growing up, and I think most of my friends are also like this. I think you develop a sense of what Europe is when you live like that.
Which countries were it? You said 3 different countries. I myself, I grew up also in 2 countries, Poland and Germany, and I think it matters a little bit. Which 3 countries were you crossing?
Italy, France, and Ukraine.
Which are also very different countries, especially I would say Italy, France, and Ukraine. Well, like Western and Eastern Europe.
I mean, Ukraine we went there occasionally. I didn't live there, but Italy and France, I lived 2 periods of my life in both. I've had friends from all over Europe my whole life, and I've traveled. I've seen a lot of Europe, and I've seen other parts of the world. And you do recognize a commonality of European countries when you see the difference. I think this is something we often struggle with in Europe. It's a fallacy we get into, thinking that Europe is the globe. Europe is all there is, and we focus on our differences, when in reality we are far more similar to each other than to other countries and other populations around the world.
What would you say is the similarity? What makes Europe Europe?
I mean, there's obvious things, right? Especially in the current climate, we are, I think, the only continent that's really left that is dedicated to the ideas of liberal democracy and rule of law and all the nice things we take for granted. But there's also a big intangible aspect of it. I think even culturally, I had this discussion with a French person recently. This is just like the French mentality. He was talking about federalism, and he was trying to come up with a shared common European cultural heritage, and he went back to the Celts.
The Celts, that's something new. Romans and Greeks.
Far, and I think you can figure out why, because the obvious one, Christianity, is, it's a religion, and we don't do that in France. We cannot accept that religion is our shared cultural heritage. I would obviously say Christianity is a very big part of shared European cultural heritage, not strictly being a Christian myself, just the cultural aspect of it. But really, it's thousands of years of shared history and development. It's the Greeks, it's the Romans, it's even the pagan tribes we had similarities among them. We are a part of the world, undeniably. There has been movement around Europe. There has been, you can't call it a society, but like a civilization developing here for a very long time. In the same way that China is a thing that exists, Europe is a thing that exists. We are, for various reasons, more fragmented. I often see us a bit like ancient Greece. We undeniably have something in common. We just like to pretend that, everybody's ego is so big that we cannot act together.
I think it's a very fitting analogy, like with the different warring states and city-states in Greece, and that also formed unions at some time. Today's Europe.
In times of trouble.
In times of trouble. But also, one could say a little bit cynically that the Mediterranean split in ancient times at the beginning between the Greeks who became more of a museum and the Romans who were the industrial might and powerhouse. We see today in the Western world the split between Europe that's more stagnant and the Americans who are more dynamic.
Exactly.
Do you see this as a fitting analogy? Is Europe
that's exactly where the analogy would go from there, right? And the Romans conquered the Greeks. So it's all nice being independent city-states with a glorious culture each and, proud independence, but it's not sustainable. There needs to be a shared sovereignty, and that is exactly the argument we are making for Europe. America is strong specifically because it is a country, specifically because you don't have to consult every state on every single foreign policy decision, and Alabama can hold up treaties as it wants. That's antithetical to power and stability. And I think that's an uncomfortable argument that we often don't want to have, because Yes, we are sovereign countries. Yes, we all have a proud and glorious history. Yes, we all have our languages and our egos and everything. But we can't keep all of it and also get all the benefits of unity. We just can't. Some sovereignty
Mhm.
needs to be given up. Some independence needs to be given up. That is just the definition of uniting.
Mm.
And I think we do ourselves a disservice by pretending that it can be done without any uncomfortable choices.
What would you say are, like, for you, the most important reasons or motivations for European federalism?
I'll go back and complete my story. After leaving home, I went to study in Italy for a bit and
Mhm.
in the Netherlands and in Switzerland, which have been also formative experiences. I've been a federalist since I was a little child. I cannot tell you why, but I've always seen Europe as this, not a political reasoning, but really an emotional thing. I
Mhm.
really do see Europe as a people, and the people should be united. And the European project is one that I'm very emotionally attached to. I'll get to your question. This also ties in with what I said before about our commitment to democracy and rights. And a big thing for me was always the death penalty. I think it's very funny that we are the only place in the world that is actually committed against the death penalty, where I think this makes us fundamentally less barbaric than most cultures around the world. So both of these things feed into it. My vision for Europe is really for it to be a model state and a model society. I think this is vaguely the way Dutch people think of themselves, and often they are right. I want to be the best place to live in the world. Want Europe to be leading in everything and everywhere. I want us to be the most democratic, the most well governed, the kindest, the cleanest continent anywhere in the world. And I really don't think this is impossible. I don't think we are incapable of achieving it. I think we are held back by ego, by momentum, by procedure, by various things that need to be overcome.
Mm.
Not to sound like I want, a strong leader to unite Europe and make all the decisions. Absolutely not. It needs to be done the European way, but a lot of things need to be let go into the past.
Mhm. I mean, arguably, in many ways, Europe is already the best in many categories that I think matter for the average person, like life expectancy. I think even like in Romania or the more poorer parts of Europe is better than, for example, the United States or anywhere else in the world, except maybe of like Japan.
Yes, but we are this way because, first of all, we were powerful empires, and then because until now we are under the protection of a powerful empire. Unfortunately, I don't see it happening any other way. We need to have power on the international stage. We need to be able to project power. We need to be able to threaten, in a sense. This is, mutually assured destruction logic, but you do need to
Hmm.
be afraid that Europe will crush you if you mess with it in order for us to be safe and comfortable and be able to be the best society that we can be without foreign
Hmm.
interference. Because this is another, I think, fallacy of many Europeans is that we do have enemies, or the fallacy is that we don't. We do have enemies. There are nations, there are governments, there are people out there that want to make Europe worse, as anyone has enemies. But, we have enemies and it is not immoral for us to protect ourselves from them.
Yeah, agree. Especially as you said, the American protectorate, vassalage, it doesn't work anymore. It has failed, I think, arguably in the last decade since Obama basically abandoned Crimea.
It's slowly retreating. I think we're still benefiting from it quite a lot. I think if America were to pull out completely right now, we would be left naked and afraid. I think it's been a deeply embarrassing political failure on the part of European governments to allow this to happen, not to
Mhm.
use the opportunity to build up our own strength, but to just completely give up. What you mentioned before about Europe being the best place to live, I think it is, but it's not sustainable. We have
Yeah.
built this on the back of American protection in a very short-sighted way, in a way that is now eating us alive, eating our budgets, eating our ability to defend ourselves, eating our ability to invest. And it's heartbreaking and extremely stupid. I'm very happy to see that Europeans are waking up, especially young
Mhm.
Europeans are seeing the damage that has been done and what must be done to reverse it. But I'm sorry to say, many countries are still going in the wrong direction. Italy, country I consider mine, is still very much going in the wrong direction a lot of the time. I believe we'll make it, but I believe we need to use these last moments of American protection as much to our advantage as possible.
Mhm.
it's going to be rough without them. It's going to be even rougher when they properly go against us.
Yeah, as parts of them already arguably do, especially of like the MAGA
For sure. It
bubble.
can be a lot worse.
It could be, probably it will be a lot worse. You just said like some countries going in the wrong directions, like Italy. What are like the wrong direction you're seeing here right now that has to be course corrected?
Well, Italy has this habit of going in the wrong direction. We have a very short-sighted political culture. We have a habit of wasting money and then acting shocked that we don't have money anymore. This has been happening for like 70 years. There was
The
an
French
economic.
have similar issues.
Yes and no. Yes, they're being very silly now, but the
Hmm.
French do have since de Gaulle, but even since earlier, and I think this is a legacy of empire. They have a naturally more strategic way of thinking. They consider the effects of their decisions on, the glory of France 100 years from now. Italians, on average, do not care. Italians do not think this way. I don't want to disparage all Italians, but Italian political culture is very much focused on the next 2 years and on fixing small symbolic problems with huge costs that nobody cares about. You can see this in immigration policy. You can see this in tax policy. You can see this in a lot of things. I am I'm naturally more critical of Italy than other countries because I like it, but yeah, it's a bit of a disaster a lot of the time.
Hmm.
But sorry, just to finish, the bad
Yeah.
direction broadly in Europe are the classic ones: populism, nationalism, separatism, all of these silly things that are really beside the point and are counterproductive to what would actually solve our problems. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, especially the current like nationalist populist wave is also driven by our foreign adversaries like the United States partially, but also especially Russia, who has propped up, financed, amplified in the media nationalist and populist movements. Do you have an opinion or vision on how we should position us here, especially looking at your own very technical background? You're a machine learning engineer, so you know more about the IT world than I do. How can we like protect our information sphere? Do we have policy
Yeah.
ideas,
Well,
visions?
it's first of all, it's good to raise Russia. Russia is our number one enemy and has been for years and years. I think people fail to accept the continuity between the Soviet Union and Russia. Some things
Hmm.
changed, but the fundamental geopolitical view of Europe has not, even from before then. About political influence, I would caution against thinking that Russia has some sort of technical ability that we cannot possibly have, some sort of complex tricks up its sleeve. It really doesn't. It's just a concerted and coordinated political effort to use its technological abilities to influence politics in Europe. We could do that if we wanted to. Obviously, that's not something we do, but it's not like they have capabilities that we don't. The problem is really that defending against these capabilities is a lot more technically complex than attacking from the other side. So we need to be significantly more technologically capable than Russia in order to effectively defend ourselves from their attacks. What that means exactly is complicated and multifaceted. I think still the best approach is not necessarily some clever technical solutions. It is the basic thing of finding Russian money in European politics. A lot of it we know exactly where it is, and actually stopping that, punishing people who take Russian money. I think what we did with removing RT and other Russian channels from the public discourse was a good thing. We can go a lot deeper. There are plenty of politicians in Europe who have open ties to Russia. And yeah, I mean, this is always maybe the most difficult part, but Europeans don't seem to care. Voters do not seem to care. I think it's a task of educating voters, informing voters, and really showing what is going on, because
Mhm.
people in Europe do not realize what Russia is and what Russia is doing. A lot of them because they don't want to, because they're not incentivized to, because they used to do a lot of good business with Russia before the war, and they would very much like to go back to that, which is understandable. Incentive structures are the way they are. I would hope there would be more civic responsibility on the part of these people, as there is in America. That is something we need to build for Europe. We don't have that yet, because obviously a place again like Italy is less at risk of being invaded anytime soon. Not at no risk, but they don't internalize the fear as much as the Baltic states, for example. And there's a lack of empathy within the European Union, where to say like, Lithuania are our brothers and then getting invaded is a disaster. A lot of people in Italy would not agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, that's something already I see a lot in Germany as well, where a lot of people just have very little understanding for the threat coming from Russia. Not the same as if I go to Poland or in Ukraine. And there's a lot of also like influence networks, Russian ones still roaming very freely, propagating pro-Russian positions, politicians with close ties. I mean, one of our last chancellors, Gerhard Schröder, is openly lobbying for Russia. So there's a disconnect between the eastern part of Europe and the more eastern, I would say, here. You yourself have also, I think, quite maybe some insight here that's more deeper because of your like Ukrainian, French, Italian roots. So you also, as I said, grew up partially in Ukraine and you also traveled to Ukraine still. You have been there just a few weeks ago. Do you see a growing? I mean, one positive thing I noticed about the tragedy that has been the war in Ukraine for the last 4 years is that at least in Germany, what I can notice, more people have now a deeper understanding about that region. Like 5, 6 years ago, I knew people in Munich who like thought everything east to Germany is some agricultural peasant states, and now they know that there are skyscrapers in Warsaw and normal cities in Ukraine. So like the idea have discovered the Eastern Brotherlands.
This goes back to ego, right? Western Europe is very chauvinistic about these things.
Yeah, especially the former imperial powers, I would say, like France and Germany and
Absolutely.
Britain, they often like have still the Gouvernation tunnel vision.
No, and that's like the discussion before. This is a cultural change that really needs to happen. It's not something you're going to fix with policy. I think uncontroversially, one of the most unifying programs for Europe has been Erasmus. Really, the thing of moving Europeans around, making them meet other Europeans, showing them like you need to engage with Europe to understand what it is. It's all nice and good to say to dream of federalism, but if you've never been east of Germany, and obviously there's more migration from the east to the west for economic reasons. So they do get that cultural exposure, whereas we in the west often don't feel a need to go to the east. But there needs to be a lot more of that. There needs to be a lot more of that. A lot more mobility, a lot more exposure, a lot more. Again, as you said, the war is obviously a horrible thing, but it has moved millions of Ukrainians into Western Europe who have then, Western Europeans have met Ukrainians for the first time. They've learned about Ukrainian culture. They've learned about Ukrainian traditions. They've learned about the history of the region. They've learned about, the language, everything like that. And that's a great thing. We should do more of that, hopefully without war.
I agree with that. But do you also like from your journeys, travel, do you see already also deeper sense of Europeanism rising also like in Ukraine?
So among educated young people, often yes, not always among the general population. In Ukraine, there are a lot of fears about European integration, which are, the lands being taken over by foreign investors, farmlands being taken over, vaguely foreign companies buying everything up, and it's a sovereignty argument again. Which is again, I realize politics is the way it is, but these discussions are always framed as all good or all bad. And of course, the benefits of being in the European Union are huge, but there is a cost. And it's a valid discussion to have. Ukraine has, huge farmlands and extremely productive farmlands. And if you completely liberalize that market, that is going to affect the country quite dramatically. Ukraine has a lot of natural resources, whatever they haven't signed over to the Americans yet. That it's not an easy transition to make.
And it also goes both ways. I mean, there's also a lot of opposition.
Ukraine is also not trivial, yes, of course.
Yes, but also like I know that in France and in Poland, there's also a lot of pressure from the agricultural industry that they're like afraid of if Ukraine would join the EU, they would just get flooded by Ukraine produce without any tariffs protecting the domestic industries any longer.
On young people, on like Europeanism being on the rise, I will raise a very interesting point. Like overt pro-Europeanism can seem to be lacking sometimes. You have a lot of young people voting for the right. You have a lot of young people becoming nationalists now. But the context of all of this has shifted significantly pro-European compared to like 70 years ago. We are like the Overton window, like where we are nationalist from is already significantly more European. And I think that's a very positive development. People complaining about Europe so much, to me, is an indication that Europe does things. The European Union, I mean, right? People complaining that the Union is not this, it's not that, it's not democratic, it's not, it's all valid complaints for sure. But you don't see anyone complaining about the Council of Europe, you know? The European Union is a political structure that affects our lives. It does things. It should do way more and it should do it way better, but it exists. And that in itself is very non-trivial.
Yeah.
Imagine this, when the coal and steel community was being founded is crazy. So from that point of view, I'm very optimistic.
We made tremendous progress over the last decades towards ever closer union. But you just also mentioned the Council of Europe. No one complains about that one, but also because I think the Council of Europe is very good at like making the decisions in the background and putting the blame if something goes wrong on the Commission. That's one of the many, I would maybe say, structural issues of Europe that we have as
Like the
heads of
Council of Europe,
states.
the Council of Europe, I mean the non-EU one, the ECHR.
Not the European Council, but the Council of Europe. So the one with
I shouldn't
also
throw these
Azerbaijan and Turkey. And okay, yeah, that's another issue of the EU institutions. They have.
My point was just that we are part of a lot of treaties and organizations that no one knows about and no one cares about, but the EU people do care about it. It's a thing that exists.
Yeah, but even they struggle with that sometimes. I know like MEP assistants who have been working in Brussels for several years and they have still to look up how things work all the time because it's such. I mean, that's also a result of like just 27 different nation states trying to build consensus mechanisms and consensus among themselves. It's non-trivial, especially when every nation state tries to maintain its own national sovereignty as much as they can. It doesn't lend itself to more efficient decision making. But talking about this, do you have, like, you're obviously a European federalist, and we want to see a more ever closer union. Do you have like a concrete vision how this united Europe in the future should look like? Would it be more like a Swiss model? What American model? Do you have a concrete idea what you would wish for?
You've heard me raving about the Swiss system long enough, I think.
Yeah, but our listeners haven't.
No, like you said it exactly right. I think Switzerland is obviously I've lived there, so I've observed it from inside. It's a fascinating system. It is kind of like a micro version of the European Union. It has 20 or 21 cantons. They speak 3/4 different languages. They're all they all joined voluntarily, mostly
Somewhat.
kind of conquered, but mainly through voluntary acts of union, through very slow and gradual expansion over the centuries. They have slowly grown together into a surprisingly homogeneous culture from, obviously very different places. Some came from the French area of Europe, some came from the German one. From the point of view of unity, it's a very interesting model, I think. I also am a big fan of the direct democracy model they use. Many things can be argued about it. Obviously, what I said before about safety coming from power. Switzerland does that in a sense, right? Switzerland is very militarily powerful when it comes to defending Switzerland. They have zero foreign ambition whatsoever, but you are not going to take any part of Switzerland without suffering a huge cost. And that is the whole model. So fundamentally, that wouldn't work exactly for Europe, right? We have territories on the other side of the world. It's more complicated, but just in terms of general vibes, it's not a bad way to think about things, I think. They're not isolationist, right? But it is backed by a very significant military investment. Yeah, well, I imagine the federation. I think you can't, you can give in to dreams and fully automated space communism or whatever. But
I mean, we have to reach for the stars.
Yeah,
dream big.
I think it's important to remain grounded in the reality that we have now, right? So what Europe is going to be defined slowly over time as we take each step and learn what it leads to, right? Nobody can predict exactly how that's going to happen. All right, we took this big shot with Schengen, for example, with the single market. You couldn't say like, okay, we're going to do single market and then next year we're going to do this and that. No, you do single market and then you spend like 10 years learning what the hell that means and adapting to living in a single market and developing all the structures and regulations and everything to make it work properly. And once people are comfortable with like, okay, we live in a single market, well, now something else, right? So I think it's important to focus on the relatively near to mid future. And I think this is a very good point, because you have parties like Volt, you have a lot of movements, you have the European federalists who like to talk about federation as, we just have to federate and everything will be great. Yeah, but concretely, what does that mean? Like what do we do to federate? What, like everyone comes together, shakes hands, and like we're a federation? No, that's not going to happen. It needs to be built, right? Not even the United States, that were all, and they weren't homogenous, but they were all basically in the same boat. It took them quite a few attempts and quite some time to do it properly, arguably properly. So we need to really be thinking. I do think federation is not a far off goal. I think it's something that would help us in the medium term. We talk about sovereignty, we talk about defense, we talk about the economy. I think nothing would help the economy more than a common European taxation and EU Inc. actually being implemented properly and things like that. Like a really single market, but like a real single market, a real single economy. I think you need a state for a lot of these things. I do not think it's going to be possible to have a single army with a single chain of command that does not derive from a single point of democratic legitimacy. I don't think it's going to be very easy to justify having independent taxation powers when there isn't a strong point of democratic legitimacy at the top. So I think federation is kind of a blocker at the moment for a lot of the things that a lot of Europeans want, a lot of the things that a lot of Europeans realize that they need, but can't really be implemented without creating a single state. So concretely, we've discussed this a lot in Astra. It's a big, as I mentioned, Volt, right? Like I don't think many of the Euro parties now have a clear vision of how federation should be achieved, a clear path to like, we will do this, and this, and then federation, and what steps need to be taken right now to go in that direction. We have been pushing for us to develop this in Astra. And my personal vision of this is, I've actually heard some politicians talking about it, is an inner six or inner group of a new inner circle of European integration that is really going to be a single state. So a single constitution, amendable by the people, a single directly elected government, and all the things that a state has. And it's going to be something probably approaching a confederation, like a fairly loose federal structure. The pieces are going to maintain a lot of independence, because that's the only thing that's going to happen. And that's the way Switzerland developed. That's the way the United States developed at the beginning. That's the way these things work. You cannot jump towards, a very tightly integrated federation, but like the loosest form of single state possible, while the EU keeps existing alongside it. And then it's going to be the same way almost all our treaties went. Like countries are going to want the benefits of the federation and are going to accept to cede independence, to cede sovereignty in order to join the group. That is my vision. That already is quite radical, I think, for a lot of people today. But I think this is something we can realistically think about.
Yeah. I mean, it's radical, but I think what's remarkable here over the last 1.5, 2 years, how many like radical ideas about Europe became very quickly, very mainstream. Like I think two years ago, 2024. I mean, even though it was like the second year of the invasion of Ukraine and Russia, it would still be very insane to demand like nuclear weapons for Europe or European army. But now we had this year in 2026 have leading politicians like Friedrich Merz at the Munich Security Conference openly demand we have to think about European nuclear deterrence and European army. So a lot of these things are moving very quickly, I think, right now into the mainstream. And because we have this external pressure with MAGA in the West and the Russians in the East, and I think that's also historically under this often foreign pressure is what often unites people. The Americans had the British, the Swiss had the Holy Roman Empire. The threat from the Holy Roman Empire was one of the main reasons the Swiss united. The Germans had the Danes and the French, and I think Europe has now the Americans and the Russians. And we see also, as you said, this step with the E6 that we have like gradual integration of some parts. We see that already right now happening with capital markets. There's this initiative that the largest 6 European economies, Germany, Britain, France, Italy, Poland, the Netherlands, they are now starting their own capital markets union, just
Exactly.
6 of them, and then they want to expand it to more European countries because it just is more efficient and quicker to do this than trying to negotiate something with 27 members, right?
I think, well, 2 things. One, slight negative point on what you said, because again, I think it's important to consider the trade-offs of something, right? Like federation would be unlike anything we've done so far because it's a very high commitment. You can get out of the European Union. The UK did. It's painful, it's expensive, it's stupid, but you can. Whether we should allow countries in and out of the federation, I think you're going to have to. It's not going to work otherwise, but it is going to be much more painful than this. In a system as tightly integrated as a single state, leaving would be very traumatic. And for people to accept to enter such an agreement is a big step. It's a very high commitment. So that will be difficult. It's going to require very good arguments in favor of that. But the other thing you said, I'm a big proponent of multi-speed Europe for federation and for everything else. I think it's a good model. I think it's often badly seen because it sounds like you're leaving some countries behind, which I don't think is exactly true. I think everyone who wants to join can join, right? Some countries just don't want to join yet and need to be convinced of the benefits. And as we've seen so far, there's always some holdouts, right? Some people are obstinate about adopting the euro. But generally, over time, if you give people the time to get comfortable with things, again, some countries have joined the European Union relatively recently. Italy, France, Germany, we've been thinking about this for much longer than Romania and Bulgaria, for example. So people have their own pace, but I think the direction stays the same. You just create a group, you leave it open, and you let people decide when they want to join. But at some point, they will.
And that's also, I think, one of the very European things about this Eurofederalist project and the European project in general is that it's a union based on joint mutual benefit and interests. Like the Swiss came together, and it's not like, for example, most other continental powers like China or India or the United States that came together through also conquest, but are joining together peacefully and giving up their national sovereignties to form something greater that benefits all members.
You don't need to go far for an example. Italy came together in not the nicest way for some people, and people are still mad about that today.
That's true. That's also, Europe has also a very bloody history. And I think that's also why the European project is as it is, because after the two world wars, especially, I think we were so tired and traumatized from the bloodshed.
This is why I like the Swiss model again as a model. I think doing this through consensus building and voluntary agreement and respect, and it takes more time, obviously, but it's more stable. And Switzerland has been going for near 1,000 years. It's the same model, the same system, the same vibe has been. Obviously, there's been some changes, but it is fundamentally a stable political organization.
Yeah, it's adaptable also and accountable.
And those are built slowly. Those are fundamentally built slowly. It's a fallacy to think, and that's again the unfortunate case in many countries nowadays. It's a fallacy to think you can elect the one guy who's going to set everything up perfectly, and then it's just gonna go. That's not how that works.
No.
Not because any person is incapable of doing that, because fundamentally a stable system requires time for everyone to build the momentum. It is impossible to build a stable system quickly.
Yes, but also I think what a system that's stable in the long run needs is also adaptability. And I think democracies, even though they're more volatile in the short run, they are in the long run way more adaptable than any authoritarian system that's maybe has some short-term stability but tends to trip over its own stagnation.
You'll allow me to raise Switzerland again. If you look at Swiss parliamentary election results, they change by 0.5% every election. A party gains a seat, another party loses a seat. And, over the years, the line goes there's a party that's on the rise, but it gets 5 seats in 10 years. It is ridiculously stable. It is comically stable. And the reason for that is, in my view, the direct democracy system. There is no backdoor dealing. There is no, as a politician, it's the ideal we all have, I think. You are a delegate of the people. And the moment you do something the people don't like, it's going to get voted down immediately by the people. So it's not much you can do really other than representing the will of the people. And once you do that for long enough, the will of the people doesn't change every 5 months. that's an artifact of a suboptimal electoral system, and a suboptimal information system, and so on. Like, if you look at polls in Europe that go like this, on most of the world that go like this, I don't think people are changing their minds that often. That does not seem reasonable. I think you are lying to people. I think politicians do shocking things because they think they can get away with it, and people are disappointed, and then things swing back and forth. It's better than autocracy. I'd have that any day over the Russian system, but
Oh yeah.
it can be a lot better. It can be a lot better, and there's no reason it shouldn't be.
Yeah. And I mean, we have already scoured a little bit around the topic, but you mentioned that you are also now actively involved in trying to make it better with Astra. So let's get maybe into that. Why did you join Astra particularly, and what are you doing as our finance and operations lead?
I was not expecting to be grilled on my achievements.
I mean, I mean, we just started, so we don't expect any achievements.
Uh,
We are here for
Hey,
the
listen,
ambition.
honestly, I think we've done some very good work recently. The story is, as I'm sure you know, there was this lovely movement once called Ave Europa. Well, okay, I mean, to go back, there was Volt. Volt was really the first successful European level party that is still, we live in a bubble. A lot of people I talk to still don't know what Volt is, and I'm always a little bit shocked by that, but it takes time. But for me, Volt is basically mainstream right now in my mind. But Volt obviously has chosen its place on the left of politics. They focus on issues that I think are not strictly related to federalism, and not necessarily aligned with my personal politics.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree because also the experience I had recently talking to Volt, even Volt leaders, elected officials, was often came across that a lot of them don't care that much about Eurofederalism anymore. It's more like a pan-European franchised center-left progressive party, and they are way more preoccupied with issues like migration or climate change than about uniting Europe. It's like it became a second thought to a
Which is
lot of
legitimate.
Volt chapters.
Like, there's a place for that. It's just not my main preoccupation politically right now. It sounds bad. Climate change is a huge problem, but it's not what I choose to fight for. There's a lot of very good people fighting a lot of very good fights. Getting back to the story, a friend and I, we found Ave when it appeared sometime last year as a sort of attempt to return to what Volt was meant to be, and maybe a bit more right wing from the start, which is okay, is legitimate. They talked, I think to this day, if you go and read their charter, it's a very good document.
They changed it. They
Oh, they
have
did?
a new one,
Well,
like 2 weeks ago, something like that.
I'm sure it's a lot different now. I haven't checked.
Yeah, it's more explicit on the spicy points.
We'll get to that. But yeah, but Ave, they were talking about reindustrialization. They were very clearly defining Russia as our enemy and Ukraine as part of Europe. They were talking about federalism more explicitly again. And I thought that for a very long time, I've been thinking that Eurofederalism succeeds when nationalists and right wingers are nationalist about Europe and not about a part of Europe. That's again the thing about reframing your nationalism, right? It used to be that you were nationalist about Liguria, and now you're nationalist about Italy. It used to be that Matteo Salvini was nationalist about the north of Italy, and now he's nationalist about all of Italy. I don't like any of these people, to be clear. It does show that the Overton window has shifted. And when Matteo Salvini is going to be nationalist about the European Union, then I think we will have succeeded. So it was very encouraging to see that there was this kind of like more right-wing force that really considered Europe as our nation, our thing that we want to protect. But it wasn't so right-wing that it was really against my values. So I joined Ave Europa last year, and yeah, I was disillusioned by two things really. First of all, it was very clearly disorganized, which is fair for a young party, but just it really felt that battles were not being fought, the work was not being done, things were not being pushed forward in the way that I wish they were. And then over time, it also became more obvious that it was nice on the surface, but a lot of members were let's say, very unaligned with my values. So yeah, go read the Ave Charter, I guess, now, and you'll figure out why. So I was in this state of, I was at the group chats. I had started working a little bit with the tech guys at the time, and but I was feeling more and more uncomfortable with the whole thing. And then you posted a blog post about leaving Ave Europa, and you said a lot of things that I didn't know at the time, but that made it look even worse than it is, than I thought it was. Sorry, not that it is. I have since understood that it was quite bad, and I think it still is quite bad.
Yeah.
So I wrote you, what's up? Are you doing anything interesting? And you said Astra, and I was like, can I come along? And me and Laurinas, my friend, we jumped ship, and I think it was a very good decision. And since then, I have been reasonably active in Astra. I really like the members we have so far. I really like the guys at the beginning. I really like the way we have really started the work, because I think it was very serious and methodical and well done. So one of the first things we did was get together to write the manifesto as a way to really like tease out what we believe in collectively. And I think we produced a fine document. And I think the process was very well organized by Ivo primarily, who you already interviewed. I think there were disagreements. I think they were handled very well. I think everybody has been serious and respectful and professional. And honestly, it's been a pleasure. Yeah. And then we had our steering committee election. I forget when, but something like a month ago. And I was elected, as you said, for operations and finance. So I mean, my work has been before then to set up part of the technical infrastructure. I continued working on that a little bit, but responsibility for that has gone to Rolf, who is our tech lead now. And otherwise, I've focused on my primary goal, which is incorporating Astra Europa as a legal entity, because for now we are not recognized in the eyes of the law. So it's hard.
Yeah, except like in the Netherlands and Poland, we have
chapters,
two associations. Yes, but we still don't have like the
The
legal entity, the mother organization, the mothership that we have still to set up.
So now we're working on that, and I think we've made some very good progress. It's modulo a few discussions that we need to have. You might be seeing an Astra Europa legally registered organization very soon, and we can. I think that's a very important step, because then we can really launch the system that we have come up with. We've come up with a very nice system of governance and elections and everything that was praised by the notaries we talked to. So props to Matthias, our legal lead.
And also you, because you also wrote a lot of
I
governance
collaborated
together
at
with
the
Matthias.
beginning, but Matthias just took that and rewrote it completely and wrote 80 pages, and just he did an amazing job recently. No, and once we have that going, then we are a real party, and then we can get the real work going. So we can start getting donations, we can start running candidates, we can start doing things like that. And as long as we don't lose focus until then, I think that's where things really start. It's sort of our federation moment.
First set up our own organizational federation, and then unite Europe.
Absolutely.
Where do you see Astra heading in the long run, or would be your ideal progress you want to see in the next 3 years happen?
I think I want to raise again the point from before. I think Volt and Ave, it's sad to see how far some of their members have gone into the dark areas of remigration and other silly ideas.
Yeah.
But something like Ave, something like what I wish Ave was, some right-wing conservative for sure, whatever, but Europeanist force on the right really has a place. It is something that we need to have. Something like Volt, I wish they were more serious about federalism. I wish they were actually more actively and pragmatically pushing for federalism, but that has a place, right? There are people on the left, there are people on the right. There's a place for a Green party in this camp. There's a place for other parties, right? I see Astra as the liberal version of this. It's a loaded word. Obviously, liberals don't really win elections these days in Europe much.
Always depends how you define them. In the Netherlands, they are still going strong.
Sure, but none of them call themselves liberal.
Yeah. But I mean, that's also the end of history by Fukuyama. I mean, no one calls themselves a liberal, but we are all nowadays. I mean, the Greens, the Conservatives, everyone is arguing and on some kind of liberal, somewhere on the liberal spectrum, right?
Absolutely. No, but yeah, I think that's the So okay, my battle and what I think what Astra is for me, and I think Astra is a very good reflection of my political positions, is first of all differently from the extremes. Things are not that bad actually. Yes, we have a lot of problems. Yes, there is a lot of fear and there's a lot of things that will go wrong if we don't get our shit together. But also we live in the best place in the world by many measures. We have achieved, as I was saying before, in terms of unification, amazing things in the past 70 years. We have still functioning democracies, a functioning political system. We have, I mean, yes, we've degraded it, but we have industrial capacity. We have a military capacity. We have a lot of value that we can build on. And I think it's important to recognize this because the left and the right really like to say, everything is messed up, everything is, there's no hope. We need to do radical things because everything is lost and borderline Trumpism. I think that is a very wrong way to think about things. Admittedly, it's a hard position to sell these days because it's very easy to be a doomerist. But I think that's a fundamental part of what Astra should be. Is we call it optimism a lot of the time. I think we are very optimistic fundamentally in our beliefs. Secondly, and this ties into it, democracy, but also personal freedom, freedom of speech, capitalism, freedom of movement. These like individual freedoms, not as extreme as the American version. I think the Americans go much too far sometimes. But I think this has been the foundation since the Enlightenment of European culture, and what also fundamentally differentiates us from Asian cultures, for example, a lot of the time. Not to say that it's necessarily better, I like it more, but it has worked well for us, and it is something that I still believe in, and I think it's something we as Astra still believe in. And Europe has a tendency sometimes towards strong leaders who will fix everything. I think this is, it happens occasionally. I think this is a very good counterbalance to that. I think it has worked in the United States for a long time. I think they've really fallen off the wagon recently, but really give economic power, decision-making power to individuals, spreading it around, allowing for free enterprise, free organization of society and all that is a mechanism of stability. Not to mention prosperity, economic growth. I think it's good for all those things, but it's also a mechanism against fascism, against authoritarianism, against the government just deciding tomorrow to go insane.
Yeah.
So that is something that is a core part of what I believe in. And then for the more like pragmatic things, techno-optimism, as I said, I think investing in technology, having strong AI capabilities in Europe, which is something we're a bit behind on, having strong industrial capacity in Europe, having strong defense capabilities. These are, again, it would be radical years ago, but these are fairly uncontroversial things these days, I think.
Yeah.
So all of that, and obviously federalism.
I mean, federalism first and foremost. It's like in our manifesto, I think we also made it clear that's for us the
For sure.
most important
it's both
thing.
things, right? It's both things. It's often sold as a solution to problems, which it is, but it's also an ideological and what's the right word? A cultural move, right? It's like Italy, you can argue about the methods, but Italy wasn't unified for, increased GDP growth. It was unified because we're all Italians and it was an ideological battle. Yes, but you know what I mean? And I really wish that Europeans would also see this in Europe. I think unifying Europe is an ideological battle. It is a recognition of the fact that we are all European, that we share a common culture. We're not all the same, and we talk about this also in our manifesto. Like identity has layers. We do not want everyone to be just European and nothing else. The onion model.
Yeah, I mean, you made also the on your website this onion generator, right?
Yes, I did.
I will link that under the podcast so people can go to it. But you built like on the website a generator where you can enter your countries and it will generate a layered.
The onion model idea is that you have layers to your political identity, to your national identity. I don't know the right way to say this, but you identify with your city, you identify with your region, you identify with your country, you identify with your whatever, like other small layers in between, and finally you identify as a European on top of that. The upper layers do not overtake any of the inner layers, right? You can be a proud Frenchman and a proud European. You can be a proud Romanian and a proud European. And that doesn't detract from from the layers. I think people are often afraid of losing their regional identity. And obviously there's a trade-off, right? If you want to be the most Catalan nationalist person in the world, you're not going to be a proud European because, nothing other than Catalonia exists. But you can be a proud Catalan and a proud European. I do not. We fundamentally do not believe that is contradictory, and that's what the onion is supposed to represent.
I think it does that very well.
Yeah.
Also, what you said in general about this optimistic outlook of Astra, I think that's especially looking at how much populism is nowadays going on, and also how like Ave basically declined into this populist fear mongering and obsession with migration, and also with very doomerist narratives, which also are not really like aligned with reality. Like if you look at still, Europe is is the safest place in the world. If you look at homicide rates, if you look at health, longevity, we are. In many regards, we should be optimistic and very proud, and we should also optimistic be about the future and try to work towards maintaining and improving what we have. But if we fall for like doomerism and fear, I think it won't lead to productive paths.
No, absolutely.
Rarely does.
Again, somewhere where I think we should take example from the United States. Believing in yourself is very important.
Yeah.
Believing in your abilities, believing that everything will fundamentally be good as long as you work hard enough. I think that's a good way to think, personally and politically. And in Europe, we really have no reason to think otherwise.
Yeah. And I think there's also a big appetite for that. I mean, I was very surprised actually when we launched our manifesto, soft launch, that we had like immediately 600 sign-ups to the newsletter and people interested in joining, which was like 600 people is more than other had when we left. So and we had that like within 3 days. So I think there's a big appetite for this kind of optimism and forward-looking federalism, because also people are getting tired of the populism.
I think there's an appetite fundamentally for new things and even radical new things at the moment, because obviously the old systems are cracking a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's where populism comes in as well. Although obviously it's the wrong solution. That's where some more radical left-wing movements come in. And what I think is often missing is exactly what we try to do, which is a very optimistic view of the center. It's not let's keep everything the same. It's let's build proactively on what we have instead of trying to tear things down.
Yeah. I mean, I think big for us, you said, a lot of people just want change because they're also disappointed with centrist parties. And in a lot of Europe, the center parties are like 150-year-old social democratic parties who have wanted to abolish the emperors and kings and introduce social welfare. They did that all like 80 years ago in the 1940s, 50s, and basically they don't have any visions for the future since then. They just redistribute now, maybe a little bit more to pensioners, wobble around, but they have like ideologically, the established center parties are exhausted and people want change. And right now they often turn to populists for change because, that's
I think there's also the argument that the traditional left-right economic split is not the most important thing for people anymore. We have sort of settled on economics from the times of communism and from the times when that was a serious argument. So now people are more focused on I would hope it's the Euro-federalist, not federalist axis, but it's like also the immigration axis, a lot of cultural battles, a lot of other issues are becoming more important than they used to be. So that also shakes up the old political system, because you have a lot of countries that still have like the center left party and the center right party, and they're almost the same, and they fight battles that nobody cares that much about anymore.
So I think we will, with Astra, now start picking the right battles.
It's going to be an interesting process. It's all nice and easy to dream of things, but I think that's where Volt fails, and that's where Ave fails in part. You need to go out there and convince people, and not just the people who you already like and the people who already agree with you. You need to convince people who are very prone to hating you and your ideas that actually it's a good thing to do. That's what politics is, and I think it's possible, but I think there needs to be a big cultural and social battle, not just coming to the election and spouting some arguments, but I think fundamentally the way most people see Europe needs to be needs to change
Yeah.
because it's in line with reality anymore, and someone needs to push for that.
Yeah. I mean, what Europe still lacks is like this thick cultural hegemony, cultural layer. And we don't have that much pan-European media, pan-European discourse. It's not
Oh,
as like embedded in everyday lives.
again, this is where I think which is why I'm very sad that Ave has gone the way it has. I think something like what Ave could have been really has a place. I'm not a fan of thinking of political forces as like the one true solution to everything. I think process is the one true solution, and this back and forth between left and right, and creating more wealth and creating more rights, and so on, that's a very healthy part of our system, and that's how things work. And I think there is absolutely a role for a right-wing political force in Europe to play this, like building an understanding of a common culture, building a common European solidarity and all of that. And there's always obviously a place for the left. Arguably, I mean, the left tends to be the one that starts these discussions first of uniting governments and all of that, and those are both good things. Again, I'm very sorry that Ave is in the state that it is. I hope it either phoenixes into something better, or someone else comes and takes its place. I know you don't believe they will, but I'm not
Yeah.
attached to Ave itself as an organization. I just think they briefly fill the niche that needs to be filled, and that I don't
Yeah.
personally want to fill. So someone should, and
Yeah.
we've different niche. And we should all work together towards federalism.
Yeah. I mean,
I would love to work with Volt and with Ave's successor and whoever else to build a federation together, and we can argue about
yeah.
what's going to be done.
I agree with that. I mean, I also like wrote an essay about this meta federal, yeah, the European federalist meta game. I called it that. You have to, if you want to really unite Europe, you have to have political movements across the entire political spectrum. Like really, so European federalism doesn't become just an issue of the left or the center, but it becomes something the far left, the center, the right, the far right. Everyone just agrees on it. Like nowadays, everyone basically agrees on capitalism, except maybe the some sliver of the far left. But even most far left parties in Europe don't want to abolish markets completely nowadays. We don't want to go back to planned economies. But
Yeah,
everyone agrees, okay, we need some form of market-based economy. How should it look like? That's the discussion, and I think that's same should happen with European federalism. That everyone agrees it should. It's like the paradigm we all agree on, and it's only discussion how should it look like. And I think for that we need far left movements, far right movements, right left movements that push for it. I think Ava had the potential to be the big tent right movement until like it tilted over to the far end. And right now it's accelerating its course towards more far right discourse and being more narrow. And I think then it will just lose its ability to like really win over an electorate. But we will see. I
well,
still hope that we can spread at least the European idea in the more nationalist circles. That's what they are doing. And maybe they will be more efficient now doing that, spreading Europeanism to the right fringe than before, when it was still like a broad, big tent right wing movement trying to unite from the classical liberal to the right to conservative, everyone under one roof, which obviously failed.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think
let's see. Yeah,
very important to note, sorry, about what we were saying before, that federalism is very orthogonal to a lot of the other issues we discuss. Federalism is not capitalist or communist, even though that's not really a big issue. Federalism is not pro-immigration or against immigration. Federalism is not, it's not pro-green transition or against green transition. Like, these are things we believe in, but federalism itself is not inherently any of these things. It's a solution to a lot of problems across the political spectrum. It enables us to make decisions more effectively to solve problems more effectively. Either way, we choose to solve a problem or not solve a problem. But I don't like, we get these comments a lot on Reddit, on our subreddit, that why do we need, on X, why do we need multiple federalist parties, right? There is already Volt. Shouldn't we all unite behind Volt? And no, I do not think so. I don't think that federalism is fundamentally tied in with most of the rest of Volt's platform. I think Volt is a federalist and leftist and social justice and environmentalist and other things party. And you can have something like Ave, which is a federalist and anti-migration and a bunch of other things party. And the federalism is fundamentally the same. They would fight about how it would happen exactly and what to do within the federation, but they can very much agree on the federation being a worthy goal and something we should pursue. And I think that's very important to realize. And I think that is why it's good to have multiple federalist parties of different political colors. And I think, yeah, I mean, obviously federalism versus anti-federalism is an axis of political discourse, but it's not very strictly tied in with a lot of the other ones. And I think for a lot of political forces these days, federalism is more attractive than anti-federalism.
Yeah. But in general, yes, I think the big problem we have in Europe is that it comes back to like incentives, right? The incentive structures are still like, even if like most mainstream parties agree they want more federalism, for the national governments have very strong incentives to like always prefer their own industries or protect their own industries, try to, and also protect their own power and not give up the power to the European level or to blame Europe for things that go wrong. So that's also, I think, why we need these pan-European parties like Volt, like Astra, like Ave, that are capable of overcoming this national incentive structures of being reliant on your national voter base and your national donor base. And you can really have a pan-European perspective and look at what would benefit Europe as a whole. Because in the long run, we benefit all of Europe benefits, right? Often the national interests are only beneficial in the short term.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the classic problem of politics, right? You want a small win at the cost of everybody else, and you need to set up a system where you align your personal gain as much as possible with society's gain.
Yeah.
And setting up the system is the hardest part because it requires one big step of commitment from everyone.
Yeah. But looking again on our own mini federation, Astra Europa, I think we are doing right now a very good job at setting up a system that will run well and will also start really running over the next, like 2, 3, 4 months when we have a legal entity established and the machine can go. And
We're recruiting
yeah,
people at the moment.
we are recruiting quite a few people right now. We still need more women.
For sure. I mean, we're just starting out, right? But applications are open, and I think a lot of the candidates so far are very, very promising.
Yeah.
And I think there's a few women in the pipeline. It's not.
And also within the organization also as ready. So we are not a boys club like Ave was at the beginning. That's a good thing, but we still have to improve on that. And yeah,
If
I'm very much looking forward.
the right place to do what you call it, advertising or calls, but like we do need women to help us write policy. So please do apply. We are in the
If you're
process,
listening to this,
and
yeah,
not just women. We need people from all walks of life. I mean, obviously the current members of Astra are fairly similar among each other. Right? We're a group of people that come from sort of similar walks of life, but I think we've touched on this before. You need to convince everyone, not just fancy educated Europeans who have lived in a few countries and like liberal politics. We really need people from all walks of life to help us draft a policy that will convince people from all walks of life to vote for us.
yeah,
So
that's
please
true.
apply.
Please apply, join, and I think it will be an awesome journey.
Absolutely.
I'm looking very much forward to it. Yeah, I think that's a good note to end on, right?
Yeah.
Pietro, it was awesome to talk to you. I'm very much looking forward to continue working with you and on us for the next few months and probably years, and if not decades, depending on how Astra develops. And yeah, thanks for coming on my podcast. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks, Nico. I would love to recognize your role in co-founding Astra as well and pushing for Ave before it went bad. You have been in this fight for a long time, and I think you're still fighting the good fight. You're
I
very
try my best.
and no, I mean, listen, you have done a very big part of the work for Astra, organizationally and promotionally and everything, and
Yes, but at the end, I think for Astra, actually, I did mostly like bring very good people together. I'm less involved now in Astra than I was in Ave just because I have like right now more private commitments, like work and so on.
one of your main contributions is learning from all of Ave's mistakes.
Yes, that's like also like one of the guys who recently recruited for a German founding team who's like a venture capitalist. He also said like, you get better by iteration, and he likes to invest in serial founders. He joked, and I mean that's like he's basically Astra is also, I think, because a lot of us have this background of being an Ave before that, we are like learning and iterating upon the mistakes of, I mean, both Volt and Ave. We have like now two big case studies where we can like learn from and improve on, especially on the governance.
Third time's
And I'm very happy to like bring this experience and do my part.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure to be on the podcast, Nico. Thanks.
Thanks, Peter, for coming.